Now, up above here, the main part of the assembly space tells us about our patron, St. Thomas. So we'll start with this window, which is located right up there, and this is the Call of Thomas by Jesus. He must have been on a day off from the office because he's on a fishing expedition. These are obviously our first apostles were fishermen, okay? But this is Thomas. Thomas is often seen in a green robe. Don't say that he wore green all the time, but he basically, for the sake of this particular image, he has green. And Jesus is calling him to be one of his disciples. And see, the other apostles are also excited about it. And it says, "Follow me," from St. Matthew's Gospel. Okay, now over here, we have probably a day in the life of the ministry of Jesus. So here's Thomas again. You see he has a purple and green tunic on, and he's holding a staff, which is a sign that you're on the way to being the future bishop, like a crosier. So there's Jesus, and Thomas is in the midst of the others. Okay.
What does the window say?
Let us go. At this point, in this particular thing, Jesus has said to them, "I'm going to Jerusalem." And they're like, "Oh no, he's not going to Jerusalem." Because they all hate you in Jerusalem. If you go to Jerusalem, we're all going to be in trouble. And Thomas is like, "You know what? Don't be afraid. If Jesus is going to Jerusalem, we're going to Jerusalem. I'm going to Jerusalem." Okay? And now we have, there's another image of Thomas discussing and talking with the apostles, probably
About the dove.
it's the second Sunday of Easter. He was missing in action. No one knows where Thomas was, but he wasn't at the first time Jesus revealed himself. And they're saying, "We've seen Jesus, we've seen Jesus, he's alive." Believe this unless I put my fingers into the nail prints, put my hand on his side. So this is at the point, it's a post-resurrection story where Thomas, has to, be honest and say, I'm struggling with this. I'm having a hard time with this. Okay, in other words, honest and doubting Thomas. Okay? And there we see the second Sunday of Easter, where Jesus, once again, appears to the apostles and says, "Listen, Thomas, come here. I don't want you to be in unbelief. I want you." And it's like, come on. I'm not afraid to invite you to go where I've been. I have suffered. And Thomas, I want you to now actually touch where this spot is. So it's a beautiful moment. And outside, over the front door of the church, is one of the most beautiful statues, which depicts what we see here, where Thomas makes a simple but profound statement. Every time I go by it, I always say this, "My Lord and my God," a confession of faith. So when you ride by the church and you look up and you see that beautiful statue over the front doors, just remember, "My Lord and my God," a profession of faith made by Thomas. Okay?
Father?
Yes.
Where are those windows?
They're all along here, on this side, the top part of the assembly space with the nave. They're all along. All the windows in the top part of the church are about the life of Thomas.
We're going kind of clockwise.
You were going this way or over here. Now, these depict Thomas, and they're coming from. They could possibly be from the Gospel of Thomas, but from apocryphal. So these are all rooted in our four Gospels on this side. And the windows over here deal with more tradition, nothing found in the Bible. I love these windows, they're great. This one is the back, which I mentioned that tradition has that Thomas got as far as India, and there's looks like a Taj Mahal behind him, right? Okay, and then you have, of course, St. Thomas, and does anybody know who those three guys are?
The Magi.
The Magi. Somehow they all met up like 30 years later, And you have them getting baptized. You go, oh my word, they saw Jesus as a little baby at the first Christmas. Now, do we know if this is actual? It's not rooted in the Bible, but tradition had it that Thomas baptized the three kings. And so we have 30 years later, after the death and resurrection of Jesus, okay, almost maybe even 60 years, 30 years and then 30 more years later, okay? So, and it takes place there in India, supposedly. And as I pointed out before, many of the apostles, except for John the Evangelist, suffered a martyr's death. And Thomas, as you see, the soldiers representing the government at that time, wanted him silenced and taken out. And there's stones around him, and they spared no hardship upon Thomas and to have him taken out. Okay, and that's the Linda read up there. So the call in Scripture over here, and then over here is the apocalypse.
There's
Now,
two movements. One of them is preach the gospel, which is the missionary call of Jesus.
right?
And then there's also St. Thomas at the empty tomb of Mary.
Correct. But I would cut those because of time. But you can see them when you're in church.